everyone, I'm Keerthi and I've joined Accenture's graduate consulting program for 6 years. I've been with Salesforce.com ecosystem for 4+ years. I've joined predominantly as I've done a analyst program, and then I've done the Siebel integration designer. That's where my world of CRM started. Did a bit of roughly 2 years, and then from there I moved to Salesforce, doing it's probably a multinational telco, doing the design and the test role for a year and a half. From there I did another telco-based role, which is an integration designing, which is basically integration with legacy systems with Salesforce. Another telco, you can see the pattern there, which is what I've done the CPQ role with CloudSense for a quad play telco service provider. And my current role is with an analytics of the BI client, doing the CPQ with Aptus. And Emily?
Yep, so in the spirit of Einstein, that's a picture of me with Einstein at the World Tour. So I've been working in Salesforce for just over 7 years now. I've worked for 4 different partners of varying sizes. I started off at Westbrook for 2.5 years as a consultant and did a stint in sales engineering there. About 1.5 years at Fujitsu, and then I moved across to Tequila. And here I am now at Accenture as part of the acquisition, so I've been here for about 2 years now. So I'm Sales and Service Cloud certified, and I've got about 4 active certifications across their products, so CPQ and billing, and also around implementation practices and solution design. Just done the Salesforce CPQ training, so hopefully I'll be certified soon when I get my exam. So my experience, I worked in a global publishing client as the pricing and order management capability lead, which involved 4 integration points with Oracle, and so that was designing that from a functional perspective. I've also worked on an analytics and BI client. I'm actually working with Keerthi at the moment, so as an active SME and billing capability lead there, and then a number of other functional roles in Salesforce generally.
Emily, can you check that?
Can everyone hear me? Okay.
A little louder.
Okay. So, what is CPQ? Why are we here? So CPQ applications can be viewed as sales optimization tools that effectively help us reduce inefficiencies and inaccuracies in the sales cycle. And this is achieved by bringing the complexity around products, pricing, and business rules into one central place in the system, so in Salesforce, and more importantly, making it accessible to salespeople in real time as they're configuring their quotes. You haven't got Bob over here having to go and ask his head of sales if he can sell products together. All this logic is housed in the system. The CPQ bridges the gap between initial opportunities, the initial interest in a sale, and actually closing that sale and making it into a firm order. There's all the processes in the middle that we need to go through to configure our products, to do the pricing, to generate our quote documents and get it out to the customer. I think it's important to note that it's not where the journey ends. It's part of the wider quote-to-cash journey that you'll hear a lot of people talking about, particularly at Dreamforce as that's coming up, which Keerthi's going to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation, where we start to think about what happens after the sale. We need to manage the billing, we need to manage the revenue, and off the back of that then renew our products. So why are more and more people interested in CPQ? Why is everybody doing it? The main benefits that CPQ can deliver is increased speed. So it's much faster to get your quotes out to your customers, and actually the life cycle of quoting for your salespeople becomes a lot quicker. They're spending less time on proposal generation, amendments, and the actual process of configuring the products becomes a lot faster and more accurate, which in turn then means we're eliminating a lot of the errors that we frequently see. We know that people are compliant with company-wide policies and rules because they're inherent in your Salesforce solution. Salespeople are using standardized templates that have already been seen by product marketing, by legal, and standardized terms. And further to this, we can actually start to use functionality like advanced approvals to control the amount of discounts that people are applying. We can put appropriate thresholds in place. If it's a small deal, we don't want people to be stuck in a bottleneck of approvals when it's fine. If we've got a massive discount going through, we might need to escalate it to the global head of sales. So for salespeople, maximising the deal size and effectively increasing your revenue. So using things like product recommendations in the system, capitalising on cross-sell and upsell opportunities. And this is really relevant for all your seasoned salespeople. For example, if you're releasing new products, they might not necessarily know that if I buy this seat here, then I might want to also buy the table that goes with it. Also, if you're employing new sales reps, this is also really useful because they may not know the product catalogue inside out. They might not know what people frequently buy together. So by using CPQ, they can get to grips quickly, configure their quotes, they can increase their deal size by the system helping them and telling them how they should be selling what people are frequently buying together. On the flip side of that as well, we have things like constraints and inclusions. We can control what people can and can't sell together, so you haven't got orders going downstream with products that people shouldn't be buying in conjunction with each other. And the fourth point here I think is quite important as well is really around empowering the business, because with CPQ you can configure all this logic via configurable rules through the UI. You don't have to rely on developers being able to write huge lines of code to go in and make changes, which is very flexible when your selling models change, or say, I completely change in the way I'm going to sell my subscriptions to customers. Your train admins or your train CPQ people can go in and quite easily create new rules, create new models declaratively through the interface. And finally, I think it does actually really help to remove silos across the departments. You've got salespeople configuring your quotes in real time. At the same time, Keerthi might be in product management, updating the product information, updating the pricing information. I haven't just made a quote with an out-of-date price, or I've just sold a product that's going out of life in 6 months' time. And also things like bringing legal into the picture as well. If you want salespeople to actually add custom terms into their deals to get the sale, we may give them the ability to do that, but that needs to go through approvals, and legal can do that in the system, and you can have a full traceable picture of everything that's happening in that deal cycle. So next, Keerthi and I are going to talk a bit more about each domain within CPQ, just to give you a flavour of the capabilities that are available, the things you can do, the sorts of reasons why we get those tools. So C is for configure. So this really is about how you're structuring your product offerings, how you're going to model them in the tool, how people sell their products, what kind of products do people sell. So I've got whether they're standalone or bundles. So by that, it might be that I sell computer hardware, for example, this laptop. That is a standalone product by itself that I can just sell to Orla if I like. I might also say, hey, you can buy a laptop, but you might want a mouse and you might want a wireless keyboard with that. It might be that people always buy that together, it's fixed, that price is £500, so it's obviously not on that. It may be that we say, hey, you can buy a laptop and you can pick 3 accessories, 3 out of 5. These are the kinds of rules that you can put in place. How do you want to price that? Is it always going to be £500 regardless of which accessories you pick? Or are we going to actually say we're going to sum the total price of those? These are the sorts of flexible things that you can start to do in the system. You can start to employ what we call configuration attributes and options. So attributes of products, iPhones for example, we might want to capture the colour, the storage. We might model the storage as just an attribute you pick, I want 64 gigabytes. Or it may actually be a product you add in its own right that carries its own cost. And you can start to control things like eligibility and compatibility, like we said before. Building in rules, so inclusions and exclusions, recommendations. And these can be automated or they can be prompts. So an example of this might be, if you're particularly bad with phones like me, if you buy an iPhone, you're prompted to buy Apple Care with it because you're probably going to break it within a year. And I think, this is all the stuff that you can do as an admin or as a trained CPQ user. These rules can be flexible. You can build these to cater for different types of products, different rule sets for different product groups. And yeah, it really gives you greater control over what people are selling together. Keerthi, do you want to carry on with pricing?
Thanks, Emily. The fun part in the CPQ journey is all about pricing. So as you can see here, no matter how good you configure a product, if you can't sell it, there's no point in it, right? So the pricing is the fun part in the whole CPQ journey. The reason because you can get pricing from an external system. Say for example, you can have like an Oracle as your product catalog master. You can bring the pricing from an Oracle onto CPQ journey, or you can make your CPQ as your catalog master. It's all depending on your client requirements. So you can get the pricing from an external system. You can do an in-house pricing rules. Say for example, you can sell a product which is like $100, right? And then you can basically say like, actually, the customer whom I know is basically a genuine customer with a status of platinum or a silver or whatever. You can configure the rules based on your partner status. I'm going to give some discounts. So that's the pricing rules. The next one is the price matrices. This is so useful in a telco world. Say for example, you offer a product which is 2 gigabyte is free with the package. Any additional megabyte that they consume, you can charge them like 10p or 10 cents. So you can do that. So that is based on your price matrices. You say like, actually, if it's anything additional from 0 to 100 meg, I'm going to charge 10 pence per megabyte. Anything over from 100 to 200, I'm going to charge them extra. So you can have your own slabs and the matrices that you want to charge your customer. Price ramps is an interesting functionality actually, which is you can sell the products based on the quantity. This might be useful in some of the industries where for a wholesale, like if I buy 0 to 100 Belvita biscuits, which I'm a fan of, you pay $100. If it's anything over 100 to 200, I'm going to give you a less price, which is $50. So the price ramps works per quantity, which is pretty much, as I said, it's for different industries. The next one is the attribute-based pricing, which is you can have your base price, say for example, iPhone at $600, which is like a standard black 32 gig variation. If you want to add a color which is a red or a blue, you can charge the customer which is additional $100. So the price of $100 is determined based on the color that you choose. Hence how the attribute-based pricing works. The next one is the bundle pricing. How many have got Sky Sports in your homes? Come on, surely one.
I have.
So the bundle pricing is exactly what it works actually. So if you look at the Sky's recent package changes, how they charge you now is basically, if you choose one sports channel, it's 16 pounds. If you want to add an additional sports channel, they're going to charge you $32 or 32 pounds. They're going to charge you 24 pounds, which is basically based on the bundles that you choose, they tell you the price. The additional one where bundle pricing will also work is predominant in a quad play market. Say for example, you can have your mobiles, broadband, TV, everything from the same service provider. So instead of charging you like for mobile 10 pounds or a broadband 20 pounds, they can charge you for the package which is 30 pounds. So that's how the bundle pricing is going to work. The next one is the discounting, which is pricing is fine. Now when a sales user tries to apply a discount, you need to figure out whether the discount is a single level approval or a multi-level approval. You can configure based on the quantity plus the threshold amount or just the threshold amount. The flexibility is there. How you want to configure it is based on the client requirements. Contract pricing and the agreement pricing is another cool functionality where it's predominantly for the large scale consumers. You can define the price upfront. Like if I try to do a renewal, no matter what my price is, I'm going to pay you $100 because that's what we agreed upon. So that's the whole point of the contract and agreement pricing. Quoting part, let's be honest, it's not a best journey, but it's probably more of an admin task where you need to configure templates, standard decencies. This is where you bring in your organization's legal team, your product marketing team, your sales guys, everyone to come and define a list of standard templates. And that templates can be configured, conditioned based on the product that you have. Say for example, you can have a template which is a standard template. You can define, I want to show only the text that is related to my products. Say for example, if the customer is buying a mobile product, you want to show only the mobile text in the template, not the broadband one. So you can dynamically set the conditions of how you want to show the templates. So once when the template is done, so the sales agent generates a document and sends it to the customer. The presenting the proposal, you can do it multiple ways. You can use your CPQ engine to present the proposal, or you download the document and you use your Outlook to send the code to the customer. The e-signature one is an additional add-ons. Not every type of clients like it. Say for example, if it's a government customers, we have government clients, they predominantly want to go an old school approach, which is the paper based. They're not a massive amount of digital signatures. So this is just an additional add-on which all the CPQ vendors do provide. So the one which Emily and we spoke about is about CPQ. This is about how CPQ sits in the whole of code to cash journey. So I'm assuming everyone here knows about Salesforce. So I'm not going to touch about this lead to opportunity because this is our bread and butter for us, hopefully. So the lead to opportunity is about, all we know about is how leads are converted all the way to opportunity. CPQ comes over here, which is where the converted opportunity is how it's been taken to the next stage in the CPQ cycle. That's where the codes have been created, the templates have been generated, the discounts have been approved. So this is the journey where the CPQ engine comes into the picture, where you convert the opportunity to all the way to code. Once when the code is accepted, how it goes to the cache is what we'll be showing in the next slide. This is the journey, how it starts and how it basically goes in a virtual circle. So if you can see here, this is what Emily spoke about, the configuring the products. Once when the products are configured, then how do you price the products is based on the rules that you set. Once when the rules are set, now the sales agent has actually configured the product, priced to the customer. All he now needs to do is present it to the customer for approval. Once when he gets the approval, the contracts are signed. This is where the agreement piece or digital signature, all those comes into the picture. Once when it's accepted, up to here, the sales journey is completed because the sales has done its job. So now it's a question of the fulfillment team or the back office team to take the orders or to take the accepted proposal, convert an order, and once when the orders are created, they need to execute it, which is the fulfillment part. Once when the orders are fulfilled, which is the services and the subscriptions are created, this is where customers are actually started to use their services. Based on the usage, you bill the customer. The billing system comes in here, which is where they charge the customer based on the usage, whatever is being agreed upon over here. Once when the bill money comes into your account, this is where you do the revenue recognition outside CPQ, or you can do it. Some tools do have their own functionality where you can do the revenue recognition. Once when revenue is recognized, you can have a functionality whether to do an automatic renewal just before the quote is accepted here, or just probably 30 days before the previous quote is about to expire. So you can configure how you want to do a renewal based on your client needs. Once when it is renewed, again the whole cycle goes again. So this is how the CPQ sits in the whole quote to cash journey. All this pretty pictures about the available CPQ vendors that we have in the market. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick check about what are the different vendors and their functionalities that we all currently have. Yeah. So what we have done is basically we have taken only the 3 key players, or the players that we think is there in the market, which is Apttus, CPQ and CloudSense. So as you can see here, Apttus, the product features, what we have with Apttus is they have their own suites of quote to cash. You have the CPQ piece, you have the CLM, and you have the billing. So once when you try to integrate all the 3, it seamlessly integrates from all the way from a lead or opportunity to billing. And they are pretty much focused on enterprise, large clients, mid-size, and the small businesses as well. This is an important functionality with all the any CPQ vendor that you take. They generate a lot of metadata. They do have some data as well. So you need a tool to basically migrate the data from one sandbox or one environment to the another environment. And this is where Apttus provides their own in-house functionality, which is called Apttus Xauthor for Excel, which is basically a tool. It runs behind the scenes to generate the data from one sandbox on the other. This is another important piece of functionality which different CPQ vendors have different functionalities, but they name it differently. which is the intelligent workflow approvals, is otherwise called advanced approvals. The whole logic behind these approvals is Salesforce out-of-the-box functionality covers approvals, but there are some lots of complex approvals that might be happening. Say for example, you might have an dynamic approvals. Based on the industry, you want to set a list of approvals that it should automatically be automatically routed to. How you do all this stuff is where your advanced approvals and the intelligent workflow approvals come in. Because you can set the out-of-office replies, it can automatically reroute based on the people's availability, dynamic approvals, matrices, everything can be done there. This is a new functionality which is called AI Max. It's predominantly like your Google, Siri, which is like, if you can say like, hey Max, how can I help, or can you please create me a code, it automatically creates a code for you. And the mobile capabilities is, what it does is basically, it's not like a full-fledged mobile application where you can open up your product configuration and all the stuff. You can do all your approvals and all those in your mobile. However, you can't open up the cart screen. You need to go to your mobile browser and open up the product configuration screen. Salesforce CPQ, as you all know, it's an acquisition from Steelbrick. It's been rebranded as Salesforce CPQ. So what the functionality, what we figured out was the CPQ UI is same, or it works seamlessly as what you see in your lead to opportunity, and the Steelbrick Salesforce CPQ looks the same. And it's easy of set up on admin. It's easy for us to start creating the products, option groups, and all this can be done easily. As I said, what you see as IWA is called as advanced approvals in Salesforce Steelbrick CPQ. 90% of the functionalities can be done through advanced approvals. The next one is the billing module. Again, it's a safe harbor. I know something going behind the scenes, but yeah, it's going to be probably a year or two maybe. CloudSense. This is an interesting vendor who has their own suite of CPQ, CLM, and order management, order orchestrator. The cool thing about CloudSense is they are so industry-specific products. So, which is, let's take an example. If you want to install your broadband in your house, right, you need to first configure whether the capacity of a line is in your house. You need to do a line checker, address checker, and also you need to figure out, based on your line checker, what is the maximum speed that you can get. So that's why they have like something called CloudSense Telecom Console, which is so industry specific. The same they have for media and e-commerce as well. And obviously it's not as expensive as compared to others. CloudSense pricing rules are so responsive, and you can basically figure out the debugging. When you do like a complex rules, you can figure out what rules have been working and what rules are not active in the console, which is good. CloudSense do say they do have an offline functionality, which is probably used by CPQ Anywhere. CPQ Anywhere functionality, which is what you can do your quoting online and offline. Yeah, so this is a slide. What we gone through is to take to the next level of what are all the features that are there and how this is probably work with CloudSense after the Salesforce CPQ. Yeah, I mean, in the interest of time, I'm happy to probably have a chat offline because we got loads of slides to be covered. But yeah, any questions, give me a shout. I'll be able to help you guys as well. Are we sharing the slides? Yes. Oh. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Keerthi. So now I just want to talk through a few CPQ best practices and tips from my experiences of implementing some of these solutions. And then also the final thing I'm going to talk about is extending CPQ. So for the developers in the room, ways in which you want to, if you're going to be looking at coding around the packages, things to be mindful of. So I think the really important thing with CPQ is that the processes should be owned by the business and should be sales driven. It's how salespeople are interacting with their customers. Just because your ERP system might have an entry for every single SKU of your iPhone doesn't mean that's how we're going to model it in the CPQ system. And salespeople have to hunt through 12 different versions of the phone. we want one phone with a colour attribute and a storage attribute, for example. There's ways in which we can get those explosions out downstream, but it's really key to keep that in mind when you're implementing CPQ. Secondly, CP and Q are inherently linked. So how you model your products might reduce the complexity in pricing. So we talked about bundles earlier. It may be that I have a bundle which is a laptop, a mouse, and a screen extension screen, that example. And by carrying the price within the bundle, we then don't necessarily have to have more pricing rules if we treat the storage as an actual option you select product in its own right. If we decide to make storage an attribute of the product, like Keerthi said, we have attribute-based pricing. So all these design decisions and trade-offs, it's all the stuff you need to consider. And another example is your quote that you send to your customer. You may have a requirement to send certain information to that customer. If it doesn't exist in the system, how are you going to pull that onto your quote document? Is it information that you can store statically against a product record? Is it something that the salesperson needs to select as a part of the CPQ process? So I think the really important thing here is that changes in one area or decisions in one area are usually tied to another. Typically, if you're working on a big project, for example, and one person's in charge of product configuration primarily and one person's working on pricing, these decisions shouldn't necessarily be taken in silos. They should be taken holistically to make sure your solution's robust. Upfront design is key with CPQ. I know a lot of us work in agile environments or with hybrid methodologies. By the very nature of cloud applications, we can get things up and running very quickly. But there are certain things that you need to have bottomed out and decided and signed up up front around how you're going to structure your catalogue, how you're going to model your products. Because if we decide today, we'll just build a catalogue, we'll put them in as bundles, and we get 2 months down the line and decide actually we've fundamentally not set up the products so that we can price them effectively, that's going to cost you a lot of time. So with CPQ, there are certain design decisions and sessions that need to be had up front. Align to your CPQ vendor product roadmaps. So I've seen customers where they've built whole pieces of custom functionality and then 6 months later it's released as a feature as a part of the core offering. So if you are finding that you can't meet a requirement or a piece of functionality you're trying to deliver, don't necessarily always jump to coding the solution. I would advise getting in contact with your vendor, finding out, can they help, what would they advise, what have other people done, are they planning on releasing something in the future, if they are, how long, if it's 6 months, can you wait, if it's 2 years, maybe not. Also, I think vendors can be responsive to customer needs. It's not to say that if you've got a particularly niche process that they're going to incorporate that into their package for you, but if a lot of customers and large customers are commonly asking for the same stuff, they're going to listen and say, hey, we need to include this in our product. And I've seen people do that with functionality such as favorites, so favorite configurations. Why, as a salesperson, can I not go and just easily select the thing that I've always configured? So, verifying that your capabilities actually map to measurable client outcomes. So this isn't really specific to CPQ, more implementation in general. But I think a lot of people see CPQ and all the things it can do, and they get excited, and they think, hey, I need to use absolutely everything in this tool, which isn't the case. I think guided selling might be a good example of that. When I talk about guided selling with functionality in mind specifically, it's whereby you can set up a list of questions and branches which will lead sales to certain products at the end, which is quite a nice experience, but someone needs to actually map that out. They need to map out, come up with the questions, which products are going to fall into the correct answers. That's a big task, and it can be very effective, but does everybody need it? No. And is it actually going to deliver that much value? Using the search filters in the sidebar, so like on Amazon where you want to refine your search, making sure your catalogue's structured in such a way that sales can find products easily is largely sufficient for a lot of people. So trying to follow out-of-box flows and functionality as much as possible. These tools are built with a flow in mind as to how they expect the process to work. That's not to say that you absolutely have to completely change your processes or your customer processes, but it's advisable to assess the out-of-the-box flow and streamline your processes and make sure that you are upgradable, it's scalable as a solution, and you're going to benefit from the constantly evolving features. You don't want to be in a situation where you've coded yourself into a corner where it's so heavily customized that you it's near impossible to upgrade onto the new releases. You see customers in this situation all the time. So that's something to be wary of. And really view the adoption of a tool, if someone's going to pay for a tool, the CPQ, it is an opportunity for them to rationalise their product offerings, their catalogues, how they sell. They got one crazy way of pricing that only 2 people in the company do. Is it because their existing system doesn't support price tiers that they've had to do some weird pricing method in their tool? And also the last one is more of a specific point to note, I think, is around renewals and asset management. A lot of people tend to think about net new business and CPQ cycle, and at times renewals and asset management can be more of an afterthought. So this can impact your design and how you're going to perform renewals. What kind of information do people and salespeople need to see in the system post-sale? Do they need to see the asset base? If they do, what do they need to see there? How is your pricing going to work for renewals? Are you just going to renew off the same price you sold last year? Do we want to renew off list price? Are we going to have an uplift? All these things are really important, and I think sometimes, you've done your CPQ life cycle, it's great, and people think, right, renewals. And actually it should be considered as a part of the main design process. And really it comes down to considering 3 main things, I think, when you're looking at your CPQ design. It's performance, scalability and maintenance. So your design decisions and discussions and the trade-offs that you'll have will probably largely centre around these 3 things. So an example might be, you might have a really awesome solution which is going to work really well for your quote when you've got 3 products on it. But what happens when you've got 100 products on your quote? What's happening to the performance? Is the system going to hold up in the way that you've built it? If you've got 200 pricing rules, every time you reprice your quote, is it going to be churning for ages? Things like that we need to consider, just moving to scalability, and also in terms of your both coding solutions, how scalable is that? Who's going to maintain that? If you've written a really specific set of product rules, and then you're like, hey, we've got a new set of products, someone's got to go in and then write more code to include those products into your solution. And also with scalability, I think keep that in mind when you're also configuring product rules. Try and make them as broad as possible, have as broad a scope, as we call it. So you're not creating a set of rules for every single product that you have. For example, like iPhones, laptops, it might be Apple products you can put pricing rules around. So when you introduce a new Apple product, automatically by the very nature of how you configure it, they're going to be included in these rules. And I've said that it's not always static, which sounds a bit odd. And what I mean by that is CPQ vendors often change the way in which they've built their products. So today it might not be favourable to necessarily put 1 million constraint rules in. You might want to model the inclusions and constraints as a part of your bundles, because the performance and the way in which the systems run their rules is slower. They may change the way in which they run these rules, which means actually now we may want to use that using constraint rules and pricing rules isn't going to give us as much of a hit on performance. So they're the main things to really keep in mind more broadly when you're thinking about CPQ as a whole. Finally, it's the final slide. Extending CPQ. So this is not to say that you're going to install a CPQ product and it's going to do absolutely everything that you want out of the box, because that's not necessarily going to be the case. So when customizing around a package, developers, obviously it's necessary. By saying keep it to a minimum, I would avoid developing whole chunks of custom functionality. I know a customer that's built a whole new custom renewal thing, and that's now a part of the CPQ vendor's offering. And the reason they did it, they needed it at the time and it wasn't in the product. So these things do happen, whereas now they've changed how they're doing their renewals and it's very lengthy. They have to go into the code, and we're advising that they assess moving to out of the box. Also be mindful of where you're customizing. If you're customizing on the peripherals, as I say, or if you're putting things like triggers on core objects in the package. Like Keerthi and I had a problem, an issue or an error that came up in our project where we had a process builder on one of the line item objects. So there's all sorts of things happening on that. And that was fine. And in my area in billing, we were doing some cancellations. It was cancelling a bundle. So for standalone products, it was fine because it's just one line. The bundles, there's multiple, and we ended up getting too many so-called error messages coming out. And it can be a bit more challenging to debug around some of these tools and find out exactly where these things are coming from. So it is fine to do, but it's just sort of be mindful of how you're customizing the package and where, because they're complex packages and there's a lot of things happening. So quite often you can hit certain limits, and there's ways of changing that. So we just adopted the method and the solution that we had, and it was fine. Utilising APIs, so I know that Aptus, Salesforce CPQ, and CloudSense all have APIs available for developers to use. There's documentation available out there in the community, so you can read up on how to do that. An example of that is the last project I was on. We actually integrated with Oracle to get pricing. And the last thing we did as a part of our web service was we invoked the Aptus out-of-the-box approval API, so that we got all our pricing information into the system, and then we could just start the approval process in CPQ using the information we got. And finally, just a couple of examples of extensions within the package that the CPQ vendors actually provide or encourage is with pricing, for example, in Salesforce CPQ, they have something called the Quote Calculator plugin, which is effectively something which allows developers to write additional logical code that can't necessarily be met by the out-of-box pricing rules. And this can be invoked at different points in the native calculation actions. And in Aptus, for example, they have something called a pricing callback class. So you can write an Apex class to house additional logic, which will fire when you are using their out-of-box reprice. So there are numbers of ways, and it's not to say that you're going to have all your CPQ projects, you're just going to do point and click. But it's just things to be mindful of when you are extending around a package. And that isn't necessarily subject to CPQ. It's generally when you're working with managed packages, as I'm sure you all know. So that brings us to a close on our talk. Thanks for listening. Any questions, we'll be happy to try and answer for you.
Is there a way to manage promotions?
So again, it depends on the tool that you have. So I've worked quite heavily with Aptus, so I know they have a promotions module within there. Again, how do you define a promotion? Is it, do you have certain products that are only available for a certain time? Is it promotional pricing?
So pricing is different for a certain period of time, and then is there a module for that, or how does it work in all three tools?
So there's a module I can talk from my experience with Aptus, I haven't actually used it extensively myself, but there is a promotions of course, object. There's like a package. There's promotions. There's incentives. There's billing. There's all the different parts of the quote to cash footprint that Keerthi was talking about. So they have a capability within that. Salesforce CPQ. There's various ways of managing promotional pricing. So yes, it's a common thing that people want. So it'd be a case of assessing which tool you're using and how to do it.
And in CloudSense, we have something called like offers. So the way how we can do is you can have an offer. Say for example, you can have a promotion offer of 25% of line rental. That is only for 1 month. So you create an offer and give like a discount of whatever 25% discount. You say this offer is only applicable for 1 month. So which means whoever is doing this, they'll be able to select the offer, and that 1 month expires, that offer will be released. I'll tell you what, from my experience, Siebel e-configurator. That is the best tool, trust me. No, I think it's a good question for whoever wants to be in CPQ. So I would say probably take a trial version of Salesforce CPQ, have an idea in your mind, read through the online tools again. What you can do is think about the scenario where you have like a like any bundles or anything that you can think of. Like for example, your mobile. This is how I started. You have your mobile. Think about like a mobile which is like 1 gig internet, 100 text, 600 minutes. You configure the products, 600 minutes, 1 gig data, 1000 text. Give your pricing, see how it works. And then what you do is you take it to the next level, which is if I want to buy an additional subscription, how am I going to do a discount?
I think to add to that as well, there's so much stuff online around blogs around grasping the concepts of CPQ initially and what it actually means, and then I do really recommend the training, I think, with CPQ because it is complex. You know, I've been working perhaps for years. I recently did the Salesforce CPQ training for experienced admins. I think there's another one which is for newer admins as well. And I wanted to go on that training because these tools are extensive, and I probably could have, you know, sat down and, you know, worked it out myself. But I think there is value in doing that if you're looking to get into CPQ fully. There's a lot of training out there, and there's a lot of blogs and videos and stuff as well. So that's what I would advise.
So got Steelbrick learning, Salesforce CPQ learning pathway. Yeah, it's
And there's
They've also got a trail, at least one trail.
Trailhead, Trailheads.
And there's communities as well online. So if you want to sign up to like the Salesforce CPQ community or the Actors community or whatever, there's a wealth of material online there as well. So you can start to build your knowledge as well. It's another way of accessing things and demos and things like that.
You mentioned product and pricing information.
Yeah.
Pricing central to it. Is it common for people to bring physical products? Is it common for people to bring in stock levels and lead times, or is that usually kept separate?
It depends. So on the project, if you're using, that might be housing ERP systems. I know that on one project I was on, stock came up as a question, like, do we need an integration to have stock levels? Is it enough to have, do you need the exact numbers or in stock, yes or no? There's varying requirements. Just depends on the customer. I think people do it, other people try to keep that separate. But again, it would be, I think, depending on how you're managing that, through SAP or something, you need to integrate and pull that information in. But it's possible if you wanted to do that.
In my second telco project, the way how we did was, every time when a sales order is processed, you have a feed from Salesforce. It goes to an external order management system. It basically detects the count. Every fortnightly, what will then happen is you'll have an Excel spreadsheet. I know, sorry. It's a quick and dirty solution, but it worked. You have an Excel spreadsheet that gets fed onto Salesforce. That will monitor the quantity, and that's how we would try to manage it.
Okay. Have we got time for one more question, or do we need to
I think we almost have
wrap it up?
yeah, let's wrap up.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.